All right, we're live. Let me just get this out onto Twitter, and we'll get going here. Share on Twitter. All right, we're live. Let me just get this out onto Twitter, and all right, okay. So now that we're done with this, okay, so just to pick up where we left off and to give you a sense on what we've been up to, we're working with Identity Services Engine, and I have the DevNet sandbox with this node. So what we're going to do is we have to log in and turn on the ERS, the external RESTful API, and the Swagger UI / OpenAPIs, which we're going to look at next. Before we do that, we're going to add plain text as a file type, which I thought was an excellent idea. I just sort of skipped over a plain text file, but it's not a bad idea, really. Turn my lighting back on. Okay, so we're going to log in here as admin, and I believe the password is that. And let's take a look before we add the text file. We have to turn on the ERS system. And I am in the channel for YouTube. If you want to say hi or just let me know where you're tuning in from, that would be great. I'm in the channel. We can chat and you can ask me questions or anything that you want. So now that I'm in ICE here, we're going to go into the administration, and we're going to look at the system settings, and we're going to go to the API settings. And this is important. So the MNT, the monitoring and troubleshooting, which is the XML, does not need to be turned on. But if we want to use the ERS APIs or the Open APIs, we have to turn on the API service settings. So we're going to turn those both on for the primary node. We don't need the other nodes, and save this. Now, what's important here is that we have permissions, and because I'm logged in as the admin, I have permissions. So it's kind of a two-step process. Turn these on, and then make sure that your user has permissions. So now we've looked at the ERS SDK, and we have to log into this to take a look at the SDK. And we've already done one example. We've done nodes from the ERS. And this is, I would suggest as of 3.1, it's legacy. So we've already looked at these, and we've looked at the API documentation, and we did nodes, node details. This API was what we did. So now let's go into the new Swagger UI, and we have to authenticate. And this is a really nice environment to work with. So it drops us into backup and restore. Here's the definitions here. So there's backup and restore, certificates, deployment, license, patch, policy, repository, system settings, task, service, and trust sec. So let's look at, deployment. And there's the Node API controller. And we can look at the different schemas here. And these are all the different schemas. So we can look at, say, node group config, and it comes back with a string. Or the node group, the pan HA, right? So this is the new Swagger UI for the new Open APIs. And we'll come back to this in a bit. We'll pick one that makes sense to start with. Maybe we'll look at the licenses. And here is all of the licensing APIs. And you can see there's gets, there's posts, there's lots of information. So we can also copy these into Postman. Let me find an easier one than license. Now, policies are really nice because you can see there's all these different policies, which is really what we're looking for in ICE, are the policy sets. So let's let's take a look, right? We can try it out here and execute it. And there is the, like right inside of ICE. I don't even need to move to Postman. I can do this right in ICE. And you can see there's the default policy set. Now, they give you the URL here. So if we take this URL and move into Postman, and I'll come back to that and paste that in. See, we're unauthorized, so I need to set up my authorization. Which is basic auth, I believe. Let's just take a quick look here on the, I think it's just username and password. And it should show us. Anyway, I'll come back to this. I'm sort of doing this ad hoc on the fly. I'll get to the OpenAPIs in a second, but I think it is just, do I already have a collection for the OpenAPIs for ICE? Allowed protocols, that's ERS. So I haven't done the, now these are the, yeah, these are the legacy APIs from the, so I'll come back to this. Let's add the text file. Let's just do basic auth here. Yeah, okay, so it's just basic auth, username, password, and again here we have a default policy set. But imagine a real ICE full of policy sets or full of all of these other rich APIs. We can turn them into business-ready files. CSV files, mind maps, HTML data tables, all that great stuff. So we'll come back to this and we'll look at some different APIs. Again, there are a ton of them. And I've done a good chunk of them already in a different project. So I'll do one live with you here, and that means this project will have an example of the MNT, an example of the ERS, and an example of the OpenAPIs. I'm not going to, copy and paste all my existing code on a live stream. I'll probably do that after the fact, but we'll do one just to show you that we have an example of all three. So again, it's API Swagger UI inside of your ICE, and we have all kinds of APIs to work with, lots of APIs to work with. We just expand, and we can see there's command sets to get conditions, right? All of these great things. So let's make the text file, and then we'll do an OpenAPI, and then we'll do some Webex, some chatbotting. All right, so let's get back to the code and ISECycle. So the first thing we need to do is to add our new text file to our list of file types. And let's add it near the top, since it's a pretty, I don't want to say basic, but we're going to say text as a choice. And then we need to add our code if they pick text. So here, we're going to add it here as another else if, and else if text. Now I think what we could also do is maybe make a doc or a docx file that would work in Word, but let's just do text, plain text for now. So we're going to call this text file, and what we're going to do is just copy our CSV file because it has a template and paste it in here and call this text file, and we're going to load ICE text.j2 and call this text template and text output. So what we want to do is text template.render the API. We're going to pass in self.api and the data to template, which is the JSON loads of the parsed output. Now we want to write this file as self.txt writing the text output. That's the templated output. And we're going to say text file has been created at .txt. Now, we already sort of have the template. What I thought we could do is just copy the MP3 template. Now, the MP3 reads this, but there's no reason why we can't. And I see node is like 1 MP3 per text. So it's not quite exactly what we want, but this is what we're going to use, is the MP3 file. And we're going to call this, did I call it text or text? Text. Let me rename that. So text.j2. And we're going to have to fix this node, because we just want it in one text file. I don't want a text file per node. But version is pretty much ready to go. So for text, we're going to just copy, or for node rather, we're just going to wrap this in a for loop. So the identity services engine has found the following nodes, and then we're going to say for node and end if, and then we have to change this from data template to node. So we're going to change that to node, that to node, that to node. And in theory, this should be ready to go. So let me set up my virtual environment. So source identity bin activate, cd ISECycle source ISECycle. And let's set up our environment variables so we don't have to type this over and over again. So export URL equals, and let's grab our URL. And again, this is without the slash here, so be careful of that. Export username equals admin, export password equals Cisco12345. And that, I think, is all we need to export. So we're going to then say Python 3 ISECycle, and let's do version, and let's do text. Version is not supported API. Hang on. Version is not a supported API. Check the README. I should have version in there. Self.api equals version. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. I left this in a kind of a semi-broken state, I believe. So we'll have to fix this code, but and I have a mistake in my Jinja 2 where my end if is. So I need to end my for loop here. That shouldn't be end if, that should be end for. So that's a mistake. But I think I left this in a broken state. I had something commented out here. So if self.api equals version, and then this should be elif. Let's try that again. Version text. There we go. Okay, good, good, good. So now if we check the version, now do I need, right? So then this is just a plain text file. The identity services and monitoring troubleshooting version API discovered the following version. The product name is Cisco Identity Services Engine, which is a type of node 1 running version 3.1. Right? So that's just a plain text. Now let's try our node before we move on. So this is node, and let's do text. And now we have our node text, which is a nice plain text file with working hyperlinks. Or in theory, working hyperlinks. So that is text. Nice plain text files. And let me clean up as I go here. Now let's go ahead and add one of the OpenAPIs. And we can, I kind of like policy sets. So that's device admin policy set. Now let's take a look at what this looks like. Try it out. Execute. And we have that. So there's one default TACACS policy set. Be nice to find one with more than just one data. Again, let's check authentication rules. Now that's under the policy set policy ID, so I mean that's a little more advanced. Let's just try to find, well, I guess we could just do the default policy set. That'll be fine. Okay, so let's do policy set as our API. So what we're going to do is here, we're going to add something to our URL path logic. So if this equals policy set, the URL is /API policy set. Now from here, let's just do no file type and print that to the screen. And this is if it's MNT is in the path, else, right? So this works except content because it is JSON. Now I don't know about this search resources. We're going to have to take a look at the response here. It has response, it doesn't have resources. So we're going to have to add a bit more logic to handle the third type. Right, so what we're going to say is elif, and I think it's ERS. Let's take a look at the path here, right? If ERS is in the path, in self.api path, then go ahead and do this code, and then what we're going to do is add a final else, meaning if it's the OpenAPI, we're going to take the headers. We're going to take all this same code here, and we're just going to modify it. And that needs to be a colon here. So none of this changes. The all JSON doesn't change, but our parse JSON needs to be parsing in just the response. So we're going to change this to be response, and then return the all JSON. So now let's see if we can get that to print to the screen. So we're going to run our Python, and our new API is policy set. Make sure I get that right. Policy set, and no file type. Hey, look it. Right away, we're printing it to the screen here. So now what we want to do is template against this output. And we'll do that in a second. So now let's do the same thing, and let's go through our files in order. So policy set to JSON. And now we have the policy set as a JSON file, which is what we're going to use to create our Jinja 2 templates. Now let's do the same thing. Policy set as a YAML file. And now we have it under the condition and the link, we have it as a nice YAML dictionary. So then I guess in order, our next one's going to be text. So let's keep the JSON file open, and let's make a template for the text. So in terms of order, LMNOP, we're going to have if API equals policy set, then we want to have our else, and we need to add an end if here. So if it equals policy set, we're going to say the Identity Services Engine OpenAPI, Identity Services OpenAPI policy set found the following policy sets. And now we're going to put our for loop in here. And let's indent that. For policy in data to template. Let's close that for loop. And let's pick our fields, right? So, and this is text. So we're going to say the policy set name is policy.name. And we've covered name with a service name policy.service name. And again, I'm sort of doing this on the fly. You can put some more thought into this. With a state of policy.state. The description is policy.description. The condition is policy.condition, and the default is policy.default. The ID is policy.id. And then we'll do, actually let's add this to the description is, and the default is, the description is, the default value is, and it is a proxy policy dot is proxy, and then the ID is there have been policy dot hit counts hits. The policy, the rank is policy.rank. And then finally, the link to the policy set is policy.link.href. Okay, that really should do it. And again, we only have one policy, so that's only going to be one hit in the text file. And let's give this a go. So this is policy set to text. And what does our text file look like? It didn't work because else if, oh, I put an equals there, not a dash there. Let's try that again. Policy set to text. And now we have a nice human readable text file. The Identity Services Engine OpenAPI policy set found the following policy sets. Policy set is default with the service name default network access with a state of enabled. The description is default policy set, the condition is none, the default value is true, and it is a proxy false. The ID is there have been 0 hits, the rank is 0, the link to the policy is, and then the link. Nice. Pretty easy to do. So now what we're going to do is do our CSV file, I believe is next, in terms of our order of files. CSV. So let's make a comma separated. Now this would be a very valuable file. Imagine how many policy sets you might have. X number or policy set to the nth value. we're going to have a row in a text file for each policy set. So what I like to do again is call up my JSON file here and make the CSV file. So what we can do is cheat a little bit here and take the API, the if-else code, and move it into, this should be the JSON file, move it into our CSV file here after node, and add our end if. And let's change this to a CSV file. So what we're going to do is just get rid of this text and make this a CSV file. So let's have it in terms of name, service name, description, ID, state, condition, default, hit counts, rank, is proxy, and then I like to put the hyperlink at the end, URL. Is that all of them? Well, let's see. We'll just do what we did before and type them out as we go. Oh, and actually, we don't want this. So then we're going to say policy.name, comma, and we'll just start replacing these. So we've done name, doing service name next. Description, ID, state, done name, state condition, default, and let's just make this hits instead of hit counts, hits. Do rank, and then is proxy, is proxy, and then finally our URL. Get rid of the trailing comma, and the URL is under link.href. Okay, so let's go ahead and do policy set as a CSV. And let's take a look at our CSV. And now we have a nice comma separated. Now let's see what this previews as. Right, so a nice CSV file. Oh, I got an extra, hang on. Yeah, that doesn't belong there. Let's regenerate that. Policy set CSV. And that's better. So now we have, and we could sort these by hits or by rank. We could make another policy set to see that this scales, but we know it will scale because it's a for loop. So again, moving along, now that we have our CSV file, everything is going to really move along even faster, if you can believe it. So what we're going to do is take our policy set from CSV and go into our Markdown file and paste it in here, add our end if, and we're going to add a header row called ICE OpenAPI policy sets, add a pipe, add a pipe, add another pipe, add another pipe. So we wrap the lines in pipes, and then we replace the commas with pipes, space, pipe, space. And we just go through these. We could do a replace all. I like to go through them one by one in case there's any regex replaces. Okay, so that now is sort of ready to go, but we need to add a delimiter row to make this a nice markdown table. So we just add pipes and hyphens or dashes with the same number of characters and spaces as our header row. Save that. Let me just quickly check something. I've got a lot of noise on my Twitter. Okay, all right. Oh, and don't worry about the background. I know it's a little plain and drab now with the gray, but I'm doing some professional recording soon, and they didn't want the noise and the clutter to distract from me. So I'll fix that. We'll either put more paintings or I'll paint this as a whiteboard, and then I'll have a working whiteboard. So let's take a look at what the markdown looks like. So we're going to do policy set as a markdown and preview this. Oh, and let me fix this. I forgot about that. Because it's a URL, we can actually make this URL a URL. So we're going to put square bracket URL, square bracket, and then wrap it in round brackets and regenerate this. Policy set markdown and preview that. Now we have a nice little tiny URL that's clickable, and there's the policy set. Pretty cool stuff. And this would render on GitHub or wherever we push this to that can render markdown, and we have a nice markdown table. So now our next file, I believe, is HTML, and we're going to take the CSV file again and just copy this, and let's head into our HTML template. And here we're going to add the if else and add the how am I doing this with the end ifs? I guess I'm doing an end if. Yeah, I'm not doing else's in this file. That's fine, that's fine. So change that to an end if. And then what we need to do is add, and I'm going to do a little more copy paste in here. So let me split my screen. And what we're going to do is add a header row. So h1 ICE OpenAPI policy sets /h1. We're going to give this a table ID of data table and open up our table header, open up a table row, give this a table header, go to the end and do table header, and I'll come back and finish that, /table row, and then we back out and do /table header, and then we're going to add a table body, And this is where our for loop is going to come in. So I need to move this for loop here and add a table row, add a table delimiter, finish my row. Outside of the for loop, we're then going to close the body and close the table. Now, as you can see at the very top, I'm including my header Jinja2, and at the bottom I'm including my footer Jinja2 to turn this into a data table as opposed to just plain HTML. And then what I like to do is again use my find replace on the commas, and instead of a pipe here, we're going to close the table header. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. We'll just see here. Let's do 1. Is that deep enough? No. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will make our nice table header nice and easy to read, and then we just change this to TD and TD and go through them one at a time. We're not quite done. We're going to make this an href. For a URL like that. Is that right? Let's take a look at another one. Yeah, I think that's right. So an href with our variable URL inside of an anchor. Okay. All right, so now let's do our HTML. So policy set HTML. And here is our data table for our policy set with a URL. Great. Awesome. Looking good. Looking good. Okay, now I think the next one is a mind map, I believe. Mind map. So for the mind map, I take this HTML that we just did. There's a couple ways to do this. Let's just take, I usually use the HTML, yeah, and alright, let's grab that HTML. And in here we're going to say if API equals policy-set, else, close this up with an end if, and paste in our code here. Now we can get rid of all of the HTML stuff. And we're going to have a header that says ICE open API policy set. And then we're going to have, let's do name as the second level. And then move our logic here. So for each policy set's name, they'll all collapse under one name. I believe that's the way we want it. And we're going to take policy set name and add 1, 2, 3. So then we're going to make all of these 1, 2, 3, 4. And put a colon. Now the URL we'll come back to and make that markdown URL, but for now that's fine. And then we just take each one of these and move them to their appropriate parent. And there's several other ways you could do this. This is sort of the way I like to do it, because I know that the structure is working from the HTML. And it can be a little tedious. There is a little tedium here, but again, we only have to do it once. And then for the URL, I'm going to take that code and we're going to put this inside of a square bracket, a round bracket, like this. Okay. And let's tighten this up and let's make a mind map. Hey Nicholas, thanks for joining. Hey Nick, thanks for joining. Okay, so now let's try to make this mind map, and it should make a third level for each policy name. Again, there's different ways. Let's take a look and see what this looks like before we make adjustments. So policy set, and this is a mind map. And if we preview the mind map, yeah, I sort of like that. So then for each policy set under name, if there was multiple policy sets, they would all collapse under name. Let me give this a little more screen space to show you what we've just generated here. So we can, if there was multiple policy sets, they would all collapse under name, and then under each policy set, we have the various information and a working URL. Okay, pretty cool. Canada Day was awesome. Awesome Canada Day, thank you. Awesome Canada Day. I didn't do any real patriotic stuff. We didn't go see fireworks or the Jets or anything like that, but it was a nice day off because I worked midnights this week delivering a Meraki course in Spain. So I really needed that that extra day to recover a bit. So thanks for asking. I hope you have a good 4th of July coming up, and I hope you're having a nice long weekend. So I think MP3 is next, and we're just going to take our text file and turn it into an MP3 since we already have the text. So let's go to our text file and take our if-else here, go into our MP3 file, add our end if, and that's really all we should have to do if we're happy with the text. So let's save this, and let's take out the URL. I don't know that having a link to the policy ref makes sense in an audio file. So let's save this, and let's do MP3. And I will play the MP3 at the risk of... Now, hang on a second. No, 1 second. We need to look at our code here because we don't want one big MP3. So what we're going to do is take out the for loop, and we're going to change policy.name into data to template. That's too bad. Here, let's do policy dot. All right, and then we're going to go back to our main code and take a look at the MP3 file loop. And we might have to adjust this, right? So if MNT is in the API, else will result in, I think this is already written for us. Let's try this. So basically what the logic is saying is if it's an MNT node, because it's not a bunch of results, it's a single result, and we might have to adjust this. This might have to say if version is in the API path, because version is just one line, it's not a loop. else for each result in the dictionary, print the result and send data template equals result. And then self.api result name. See, this might not, well, I guess this would work because I do have name. It's not, maybe not universal, but I do have a name field in result. So let's try this. Let's try this. Policy set mp3. And I have a default mp3. Policy set default mp3. Now let's take a listen, and I'm at the risk of having feedback. I'll try to keep my headset away from the microphone so it doesn't loop or feedback loop everybody.
The Identity Services Engine OpenAPI policy set found the following policy sets. The policy set name is with a service name with a state of. The description is. The condition is.
No, it's not
the
working.
Default value.
Okay, so that didn't work in my template. Oh, I see what happened. In my find replace here, I need to make this dot. Haha. Okay, let's try that again. I'm pretty close to having it working. I just a mistake in my find replace. Policy set mp3. And then let's listen to this again.
The Identity Services Engine OpenAPI policy set found the following policy sets. The policy set name is default with a service name default network access with a state of enabled.
So that is working. We have an mp3 file. Okay, great. So now let's look at our other file types here. And I think after mp3, we're getting into the SVG. So SVG and PNG need us to write a bit of code. So we're going to go to the SVG file here because we need to make, right, so if self.api equals node, if self.api equals version. So let's copy the node and make one called policy set. So this is ICE OpenAPI self.api API. And now we have to basically go into, let's look at the Markdown file because it's already a table. Right, so we're going to have name, service name, and again we can make these different colors. I think I'm just going to make them all green, and URL will be at the end. So name, service name, description, ID, state, condition, default, oops, hits, rank, is proxy. So then we have to add a row, and instead of for node, we're just going to say in for policy, and this is policy name, policy service name, we'll leave that one to the end. Well, let's just fix it now. Whoops. policy, and it's link href. Yeah, link href. So then let's fill in our other fields here. Description. Probably easier just to type these and keep that in my copy paste buffer, yeah. State. Condition. Default. Hit counts. Rank. And again, I don't know how, if we have a lot of fields, this is a lot more fields than the other ones. I don't know how these are going to look or render, but let's just try it. And then our URL. Center it, save it as title is ICE OpenAPI self API, SVG file created at self API. Okay, let's see what this does. Policy set as an SVG, and there we have our nice table on the screen. And it is a working URL, by the way. And then let's take a look at our SVG file. I thought I said to center it, but that's okay. That looks really nice. And we can highlight and it works as a copy pastable file. Looks like they've done some work to fix these tables because, oh no, it's the PNG that's going to be off. Yeah, the PNG is going to be off by a little bit. So now PNG is our next file type, and there's no real code to write here for PNG because we're just saying if they pick PNG, create that file from the SVG. So our logic is to use this Cairo SVG to PNG, and our URL is that SVG file we just created, and write it to a PNG. So we're going to say policy set PNG, and now I should have a PNG file, and look there we go, there's the PNG file. Okay, so that is the rich table to SVG and rich table to SVG to PNG. So our next file is okay, so now we're getting into the Mermaid files. So there's 4 Mermaid Markdown files and then a graph file. So let's go into our Mermaid flowchart, and I think I'm just going to take the CSV file to reference here. So we're going to copy there's a couple ways we could do it. I'm going to copy this and add my end if, and if it equals policy set, we want to make this a Mermaid file with a flowchart going left to right, and then for each policy I'm going to say ICE OpenAPI policy set API, which goes to the name. And I guess in theory we could replace the commas with the arrows. And hang on, yeah, that's a mistake there. So let's replace the commas with the arrow system. And let me put some spaces around that. And then we'll come back and add the information. Yeah, so service name, description, ID, state, and again, some of these don't work very well as a flowchart. I just do it because we can do it, and it's just another way to look at the information. Or if we want to strip out some of these fields, we can. But let's just do it for the exercise of doing it. Okay, let's see what this, and then we have to finish up our logic here, close off that Mermaid document. And let's try policy set as a flowchart. Okay, something wrong with the syntax it doesn't like. I think maybe it's the hyphens in the ID. Let's just delete it back to the policy set. I think I maybe am missing service name default. Is it the spaces? Yeah, so I have to take out the spaces for sure. So let me just see if that is only the spaces that's causing it not to render. Okay, so it's okay with the hyphens, it just doesn't like spaces. And because we don't know where the spaces are going to be, we're going to have to add some regex replace into our code here. So I see, yeah, I already have the regex replace down here for spaces. So if there's a space in the name, if there's a space in the service name, if there's a space in the description, and I think that would be it. Let's try it again. Policy set flow chart. And there we go. Now it's super teeny tiny because there's so many horizontally scrolling fields and I can't zoom in and out. But there is the flowchart version of it in Mermaid. Now that's not the best, but let's look at the other diagrams. So again, I think class will be next. And what we're going to do is take an existing class and change that into policy set. And then we're going to just get our CSV file. So for policy in the class is policy name, and then we're going to let me actually use the HTML file. because then I can do it like this. And we'll leave, well, let me just change that and change that. So I already have URL. Get rid of these. Add a colon, and I already have ID, so let me replace ID. And then we're just going to be taking in our service name, description, state, condition, default, hits, rank is proxy. Now I think this one should look pretty good. And it's going to make a Mermaid class diagram for each of our policies. Get rid of that space, get rid of that space. Okay, so that should be working. Let's try this as a class diagram. So policy set as a class diagram. Oh, I missed an if. Oh, because I didn't put my end if. Haha. End if. Policy set class. I need an else here. Else if policy set equals. Yeah. Yep. Policy set class. There we go. And does it render? Yeah, look. So now we have this nice class diagram for our default policy set, or for each different policy set. So I like this. I really like the class diagram. So then that would leave state and relationship. And let's do them in order. So then I think it's relationship next. Yeah, let's do the relationship diagram. Now these are a little tricky, and there is some replacing we might have to do. But let's take an existing one, say node, and change this to an else, and add our end if, so I don't get that wrong again. And this is going to be policy set. Have a shot of coffee here. Thanks for joining, everybody. I see 4 people tuned in. I appreciate you sticking around. We'll get to the chatbots as soon as I finish these up, which is fun and something new that we haven't added to the code yet. So then policy, and this is the OpenAPI policy set APIs, and this is going to be policy.name, and we'll get rid of any hyphens. And then let's reference, let's just use the class diagram as our reference here for these. So then we're going to make this service name, and that's policy.service name. And then here we have to have the policy.name, get rid of any hyphens, and then we have our different code underneath here. So let's just take, let's fix node, and let's take all of these here, and see if this works. Okay, let's save that and let's try it again. With policy set to a relationship. Okay, so something's not quite right here. A little bit broken. Let's take a look here. Default, service name, default network access. Is it because I have spaces here? Okay, so that's, I can't have spaces in the class. That's one fix for sure, but this is still not working with the relationship. It should have more attributes. Now, let me just see. Oh, these mermaids are quite finicky. Okay, so let's go back and fix the replace. Let's just render that again and see if that gets us a little closer. Policy set relationship. And I might render one of my other ones that is working and just to work backwards from there. So, okay, so that's a little better, but I'm missing my attributes here. I should have attributes. Let's just take a look at another one. Version relationship. See, this is what I'm hoping for. So, that has to equal that. Let's get them up side by side. Default, okay. And default, okay. Oh, is it the colons? Probably the colons. And it looks like I can't have, well, let's just try to hack away at it live, because we can do this in line. So right, so I can't have spaces and I can't have the colon. Okay, okay. We're getting closer. So let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of the spaces. And let's try it. I don't know what else we need to replace. Policy set relationship. I don't think we can have the URL because of the special characters. And is proxy, I think, needs to be like that. And let's get rid of the ID. Okay, so the hyphens are okay. Oh, is it the 0? I think it's these zeros can't be zeros. I think I have to have a character in front of them, maybe. Huh. Okay, so it doesn't like the hits of 0. So I have to put a letter in front of those. And that can't have a space, and alright, so that will work. So let me re-edit my template, and isProxy can't have a space, hits has to start with an X, and rank has to start with an X, and no URL. Let's try this again. Policy set, relationship. There we go. Okay, so now we have a nice relationship diagram. Just another way to look at it. And then finally we will finish up with the state diagram. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the working example. Else if API equals policy set for policy in, policy name replacing any hyphens, policy name replacing any hyphens, and an end if here. And then let's take a look at what we need here. So we're going to call this OpenAPI. And I got a mistake here. This should be ERS node API. OpenAPI policy set API, policy name, and then we're going to grab our class diagram, and we're going to have, so the policy name has a service name of policy.service name. I don't know about spaces. Can't have hyphens, that's for sure, but we'll take a look if spaces are going to be a problem here. They might be. And then the state is going to be that service name. And then we fill in the rest of our fields. And let's get rid of the space there for isProxy. And get rid of these colons. And let's just take a look. We might have to fine-tune this a little bit with some replacing. But let's try it. So policy set state okay, now it's something is broken in the syntax here. Let me get rid of the URL. And again, it might be the spaces. So let's just do this for now. Okay, so there's something that's rendering. It's not rendering quite correctly, but I think the spaces are a problem, and definitely the hyphens are a problem, I think. Let me just confirm the hyphens are the problem here. Yeah, alright, so we can't have spaces and we can't have hyphens. Alright, so let's go back into that. And got some extra spaces in here I don't like. Alright, so we're going to replace the spaces inside of the name And then under the ID, we have to get rid of the hyphens. I think I'm already doing that here, yeah. I don't know if we can include, no, this has a URL, so I should be okay with the URL. Let's try it again. Policy set to a state diagram. And not quite what I'm after. Let's take another stab at, let's do version state and see how that renders. See, that's really more what I'm after here. Okay, so let's take a look split screen with my policy set. What am I doing differently here? I think it's this. Did I miss a... Yeah, I missed spaces, so that is under the description. No, it's still not quite looking the way I want it to look here. Default. Okay, so that's better. This is really what I'd like it to look like. So let's just see where this is breaking down. Let's do node, because node has more fields, I think. I see, I just don't have as many fields. I only have the ID and then the URL. I thought it would build top down inside of the relationship. So state. Let me quickly look at, do I have an example? Let me just try to call up another example of some older code. if I have one with multiple fields. Let's see where I'm going wrong here. I don't know that I have it in this code. No, where do I have these state diagrams? It's just going to take me a second. I just want to find a reference to one where I have multiple. I see. So then the state only has one. Right. So then I guess in the last state I just have the one reference. Right, so I need to keep doing arrows and then interface state looks like a good example. Right, I see. Okay, and then I just keep doing arrows. State. Let's try this. I don't know if this is accurate, but let me try that. Policy set state. Aha. Okay. So it's just my syntax was off a bit. We can see hits and rank both have a 0. Now I have some spaces still. It looks like I need to deal with. Description is default, the API is default, the condition is none, default is true, right? So it makes all of these connections for us. HTTPS is a little goofy with the URL, but it looks like I have policy set with some spaces. Yeah, default policy set. So that's under description. So I need to get rid of the spaces under description, and then we can move along. Thanks for your patience here. Description. I'm already replacing it. No, state. Description. I need to get rid of the spaces. Okay. Policy set. Class, no state, and now we have a nice state diagram. Is it cached? It might be cached. Or did I get rid of the, yeah, default policy set? It's just cached, so that'll fix next time we render this. Okay, so moving right along here, let me do some cleanup here and get rid of these files. Well, I'll do that at the end. Our last one's going to be the graph. I believe as our next one is graph. Yeah, and then that will be it. So let's take a look at the graph file. So for graph, we update the Yeah, graph is a little bit different, where we update a CSV file, and the CSV file has a source, a target, and a weight, and then we have to organize our files. So we're going to copy in this, and we're going to say if API equals policy set, policy, and this is the OpenAPI policy sets API, where we're using the name, the name to the URL. So now we're going to get our class diagram, and we're going to have the policy name that goes to the service name, and we can say service name, comma 2. Actually, I should change. We have a lot of options here. It depends on how we want the graph to look, but I think I'm just going to have everything spoke off of name. So this should be policy.name as well. But you can do different things here. So we're going to then take this and say, actually let's make that a colon. The description, the ID, the state, the condition, and again we could nest these any way we want, but for now I'm just going to do it this way as a basic example. And for each policy, this would have the links. Hits, rank, is proxy, and then the URL. Add my end if here, and let's try to make the graph. So policy set graph. We have a graph HTML page which looks like this. Now the URL is a little long, but there's the URL, and here's the root, the OpenAPI policy set API, which goes to default. So I would have multiple spokes with the information for each policy if there was more than one policy. And again, we can zoom in and out. We can scroll down and toggle different things. We can change colors, edges, even the physics. Lots of options to change the view of this network graph. Okay, so that again is using the Swagger API, and we picked policy sets. So now let's do some Webexing. So for Webex, I'm going to show you a couple different things. I'm logged into developer.webex.com, and first of all I need a token, and then in Webex I've set up a room called ISECycle, which I'm going to maximize here, where I want to send my network state into. So there's a couple of things that we're going to need to do. First of all, we need to get a token. So to get a token, I typically go into documentation and go under, meetings, reference, meetings. It doesn't really matter. You can go to messaging as well. So let's actually do messaging, reference, and messages, or rooms. Let's do rooms. So then we can do the list rooms, And it will open up a new tab here where we want to capture this token. So we're going to copy the token. You can make a bot to get a permanent token, but this token will give us 12 hours. So I've copied that token in. And if I just get my rooms, I can run this in the browser. Here are my rooms, and here is that ISECycle room. And it has an ID. So those are the things that we're going to need the user to supply us with, is the ID of the room and the token of the room. Now in Postman, I have a, sorry, I lost it. I have a Webex collection with get rooms, and under authorization, right, it's a bearer token. I'm going to paste in my new token and send it, and then I will have, there's my ISECycle, and there is my ID of my room. So I need the token, and the ID is where I want to send the data into, and how to send the data into, how to authorize. So let's quickly go back to our code. And I have some existing code I am going to copy and paste into to make this a little bit easier for us. But what we want to do first is in our ISECycle, right, we're going to have we'll call it room and token, right, and self.room equals room, and self.token equals token. And then at the very bottom of our code, we are going to add some more options here. So I'm going to copy the API option, paste it in here, and call this room. And we're going to prompt to say Webex room. And this is going to be the Webex room ID. And this is not required. We're going to say false, and we're going to give this a default. Is it default? Yeah, default equals none. So in case they don't want to send it to a room. And required should be capital F false. So then we're going to copy this same thing and add token, Webex token, the Webex token, false, default is none. And now we have to add these to our CLI. So room and token. And then here we want to say room and token. So now it should prompt us for the room and the token, and we have to handle this logic now. So what we're going to do is up here at the top of our code, in our main code here, right, so if file type does not equal none, and then we're going to have some logic that says if self.room does not equal none, go ahead and call self dot, let's just call it chatbot, I guess. Chatbot. And we're going to pass that the parsed JSON. So if self.room does not equal none, call the self.chatbot. So let's write this chatbot under our files here. Define chatbot self parsed JSON, and here I'm going to refer to some existing code. So we're going to make a new, so before we get going, what am I going to send into the room? I don't want to just dump the API JSON. So what I'm going to show you is inside of the developer's WebEx, if you search for adaptive cards, it will bring you to this buttons and cards. Now, if you say try it under design your own card, it will bring you into this buttons and cards designer. And this is what I want to send into the room, is an adaptive card. And this is the payload. So what you can do is take this payload, and this is what I've done, and turn it into a Jinja 2 template and fill out the values in the Jinja 2 template that will go into WebEx. Now I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my existing code from existing. So what we're going to do is take some existing code. Actually, let's go back. I'll come back to that in a second. What we're going to do is take this code from the graph, or any of them really, with a template, and paste it in here. So now we're going to call this chatbot template, or adaptive card template. Let's call it that. Adaptive card template equals ICE adaptive card.j2, and we're going to render that and send in a bit more values. We're not quite done here. So we're going to call this the adaptive card output, and we're not quite done with that bit of templating. So what do we need to send into the room? Well, we definitely need the API, and we definitely need the JSON, but we're going to send a bit more code into that room where we're going to render, right, the learn platform, right? So what we need here is the room ID, and we're going to call that, right, that is self.room. And I think that's all we really need. We could do the device alias, and so we have the API already. Right, so that should be fine. So now let's make our Jinja 2 template. ICE adaptive card.j2, and we'll come back to this file. Let's finish our logic though. And so what are we going to do with that output, that templated output? Well, we're going to send it to WebEx. And how do we send it to WebEx? We're going to use WebEx adaptive card response equals request.post. We're going to post it into webexapis.com v1 messages, and the data that we're going to send is the adaptive card output. And the headers are going to be application JSON authorization bearer token, and this is going to be self.token. Then I like to print the post to WebEx had a response of, and then our response status code due to a reason. So I believe that is all we need to do for our chatbot code, and now we need to make our Jinja 2 template. And to do our Jinja 2 template, again, I'm going to steal some existing code so I don't have to write it from scratch. And it's just going to take me a second to find an adaptive card output. Here's the platform adaptive card. So let me just take this code and we'll look over it, and we have to replace some things. So this is, like you saw, right, so the room ID is important, and we're passing the room ID in, and we're going to say identity services engine open API for, and this is the API, right, self.api equals API here. And we're going to make it a content type of Microsoft card adaptive with a schema of adaptive cards IO schemas adaptive card.json. It's a version 1.0. They do have different versions. And then our column set. So I'm just going to use the Webex team logo PNG, but we'll come back. Maybe we can find a nice publicly available ICE logo, an identity services engine. And then for our text here, we're going to call this ISECycle. And, you know, this is sort of some arbitrary text in here. We can just call this you know, Webex from ICE Open API. And actually what I need to do is wrap this logic. First, I need to say, right, if API equals, and let's just continue on with policy set. We'll do the other ones though while we're in here. So if equals policy set, and then we're going to end that if, and so ISECycle Webex from ICE Open API from ICE Open API policy set API. And now we're getting into column sets. We're going to make our columns. So here, right, are all of our different columns. The header column. So what we're going to do is we're also going to send an adaptive card per policy. So over here, we're just going to go back to our CSV file, and we're going to take our for loop. Is this right? No, the for loop should be in the, one adaptive card per policy set. So that's going to be okay. We need to go back to our chatbot, and let's find our MP3 file. Or even this logic here. Yeah, let's get our MP3 file logic. So what we're saying is, if it's an MNT else, so let's just take, yeah, I see what we're doing here. What we're going to do is want an adaptive card per policy set. So that's the idea here. So we're going to for each result, do that. Where does result come in play here? For result in dictionary, template it. Data to template equals result, right? So data to template is not the JSON loads, it's the result. Right. And then I want data to template. I don't want my for loop inside of my Jinja template. So I don't have a for loop here. It's just going to do it for each. And what I need to call is the data to template. Right. Okay. So let's call up the CSV file on this side. And what we want in our column set is going to be, actually, let's make this our HTML page. It's going to be easier for us to do this. Right, so name, and you can have different light, lighter, whatever. I'm just going to keep it all the defaults here. And we can adjust it later, depending on if we're happy with how it looks. And we're just, so now what we need to do is add a comma. So it is JSON. What we are templating here is JSON. So I can't not put a comma here until it's the last one. So that's going to be hits. And then rank. And then is proxy. And then URL. And take out that last comma. So now we're going to, we're going to put in all of our text blocks. So what we're going to do is change that with data to template. And so the first one is name, the second one is service name, description, ID, state, condition, default. We're going to need to add a comma. Oops. Hit counts. Rank. Is proxy. And then link.href. Okay, so those are our columns, and then we can add other things to it, right? So this is a text block. So what we can just say is the identity services engine OpenAPI API using let's just leave it as that. I don't know. We'll take a look at this, and then different resources here, right? So we could just say ISECycle resources, and we'll just leave the link icon, and what we're going to change this to is, oh, and I see the text here can be a URL. Right, so let's change this here to be URL. And our URL is going to be ISECycle get repository. ISECycle. And then a URL that they can click. And this is a full blog, full how-to blog on automateyournetwork.ca. And now this is related to Merlin feature Webex Chatbots, but it is a blog that I've written on how to use chatbots. So let's just leave that in there for now. Thanks, Richie. It was going to be called Brain Freeze, but on PyPy there's already a project called Brain Freeze. So I had to settle on ISECycle, which I kind of decided on the fly. Okay, so now there's no file attachment to this. This is if they say file type none. And so I should put some logic in here to say, well, I'll leave it like that. So that's if the file type is none, just send the adaptive card in. So we'll put some logic in here to say if file type is not none, follow up and attach the file that they've created to the Webex. But let's go ahead and try this. And I don't, hang on. And I should make these environment variables. So that way we can use environment variables so we don't have to keep typing in the room ID and the, so envar for the room equals room, and the envar for the token equals token. So let's do it without the environment variables first, and then we'll try it with environment variables. Oh, hang on. What happened to my virtual environment? I see what happened. Hang on. I went into the Python source identity bin activate cd ISECycle source ISECycle Python 3 ISECycle. So policy set. Why am I being prompted for the ICE username? I lost my environment variables. Hang on. Let me do this again. So export URL equals HTTPS 10.10.21 or 77. Export username equals admin. Export password equals Cisco 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's try that again. So policy set, no file type, Webex room. Let me get my room ID for ISECycle, and my token. Bad request. That's not good. So that means there's something wrong with my Webex adaptive card. So I didn't get a message in my room, and I got a 400 because of a bad request. So not the greatest of starts here. Let me just check content type authorization, bearer token. Make that an F string. So let's print our payload. Let's print our adaptive card output and just see, and let's export room. What is the room ID? Export token equals my token. And try this again. Policy set, no file type. Okay, so I have a bad request, but what I'm going to do is copy all of my adaptive card, that's why I'm printing it to the screen, into a new JSON file, and let's just see where the mistake is here. So we're going to copy that, we're going to make a new file, that's a JSON file, paste it in, and it's red, so there is a mistake in here somewhere. Let's see what's wrong with the payload. Is it the URL as the text? Is this wrong here? Ah, no, there's a trailing comma. Haha. Okay, I made a mistake in my template with a trailing comma. With my copy and paste right here. Can't have that comma. Let's try it again. Policy set, no file type. Haha! It's 200. Okay. Big rounds of applause. We have. Now, if I go to my room, there it is. So there is the adaptive card for ISECycle, Webex from ICE OpenAPI policy set API. The name, the service name, the description, the ID, state, condition, default hits, rank is proxy URL. The Identity Services Engine OpenAPI policy set. ISECycle resources. Now this should take you to my GitHub, and it does. And this should take you to my blog post on how you can do chatbotting. Now, if there was more policies, we would get one per policy set. Now let's try to find an ICE logo. Let's just try to find Identity Services Engine, and let's look for images. Is there a nice Cisco.com? Like this would be nice. I want to find one that's going to work universally. Obviously on a Cisco.com URL would be great. Anyway, I don't want to get too hung up on the logo. For now, let's just take this nice thumbprint logo, if we can. Copy link. Copy image link. Okay, let's try that. And we just have to go into our adaptive card template and replace the icon here. And let's see what that looks like. Policy set, no file type. Yeah, it didn't like that icon. Why not? Well, we can leave it as the team's logo for now. That's fine. You know, you can adjust this, or if you want to do a pull request and fix that logo. Okay, so now let's add the file type if they picked a file type. Now, I have some other code I'm going to reference here. So what we're going to say is, and let's not print that adaptive card anymore since we know it works. So we're going to say if, now it's not going, so one for each result. But I only want one file. And if it's an MP3 file, there's multiple MP3 files, so that might be a bit of a problem. But for now, let's just do if self.fileType does not equal none. And I'm going to steal some of my existing code here. And I think we need to import something else into our code. So where's my Merlin Webex? So we need a multi-part encoder, and then we can attach our files. So that's an XLS file. I guess that's only if it's an Excel file. I wonder if there's just a neutral way to post a file that's not an Excel file. So send file. And then the content type. Right, so that's for a CSV file. Let's try. All right, let's just see how this goes here. So I need multi-part encoder, which is a library I need to from the requests tool belt. So I'm going to copy that in. And I don't know if I need to pip install the request tool belt. let me see if I need to poetry add requests tool belt. Yes, I do. Okay, good. Okay, so what we're going to do here is say if it does not equal none. I guess I could say if it equals CSV. Let's just do if it does not equal none. Let's just say if it equals text. Let's try that first. Let's just try our text file. M equals, and then room ID is our self.room. The text is going to be ICE self.api text file, and our files are going to be yeah, I don't know, Nicholas, if there is. So I see what you mean about the copyright. You would need to find like, yeah, you're right. You would need to find or make your own logo and upload it to somewhere that you host yourself. You're right. We should be careful with the copyright, definitely. So where's my text file here? I probably could have just typed that in, but I'm just being lazy right now. So the file is self.api.text, open and this is a text. That's right, so I'm not quite done. So that's, and then I need to add the file send to Webex and then send file. Data equals M, headers, M content type, authorization is self.token. I don't know how this is going to work out, and then we're going to print the file response. Okay, let's try this again. Yeah, no, I don't want to get in any trouble with the logos, so I am not using that ICE logo. I'm using the generic Webex logo from the developer.webex.com page. And if there are issues with the copyright for that logo, I will change it or make my own ISECycle logo and put the ISECycle logo on my automateyournetwork.ca and use that for the logo. For now, as an example, we'll use the Webex developer as a placeholder. So let's try this. We're going to say policy set as a text file. And I should get two 200s back. Aha! So I got two 200s back, and what do we have? So now, check it out. So there's our Webex adaptive card, and if I open up this file, there is the policy set.txt file. So that's pretty cool. Oh, hi from Italy. Thank you. Jarno Pagliani. Thank you for joining. Come stai? Sta bene? Sta bene? All right, that's great. Welcome. Thanks for joining from Italy. That is awesome. Okay, so now let's do the CSV file. And it's really just, I don't need this anymore. And it's going to be a copy and paste to say else if self dot file type equals CSV, and this is going to be CSV file, CSV, CSV, and I think that's all I need to really do. So let's try this again. Policy set CSV, and I should get two 200s back. And if I go into my room, check it out. So I have my adaptive card. The logo didn't render on this one, I don't know why, but there is the CSV file. Right? So now we can make Webex Chatbots, which give us an adaptive card per result and the attachment. So thanks for joining, everyone. There's a lot more to do. I have to add in the other file types as attachments into my room, and then I have all of those other APIs to template and add to the code. But I'm going to stop here. I'm going to push this code into the repository, and that way if anyone wants to continue working on this, and actually let me clean out I should do the adaptive cards for those other, yeah. So I have more adaptive cards for our other two APIs that we've already done, the version and the nodes, but I'll have to pick that up maybe tomorrow morning. I'm going to leave it at that for now. Let me flush out our output files from the repository and push this code in. So I'm going to say working adaptive card progress. It's not quite done yet, but let me push this into my chat bot, and let's go to automateyournetwork.ca, go into my ISECycle, pull this code in. So I'm going to say added text file type, added Webex adaptive card, added Webex file type attachment for text and CSV. Pull that in. I'm not going to delete this branch because I'll just pick up where I left off here, but it's merged into the repository. And now let me get it up onto the poetry. So what I'm going to do here, in case you missed the poetry stuff earlier, we're going to say poetry version patch. That brings us up to 103, which I'm going to update in my init file, 103. I'm going to delete my old build. I'm going to say poetry. Well, that means I've got to push that. Yeah, I did my push out of order. Poetry build. And let me push this code up. New pip build. Push that up into my oh. I got a little bit out of sorts here. I don't know why I didn't take that new version. I pushed up the code. 2 branches. New pull request. New build. There we go, 103. And then I'm going to say poetry publish using my __ token. Grab my token and push it up to PyPy. So if you pip install this now or clone it, you'll have that WebEx adaptive card stuff. So thanks for joining the stream today. I'm going to call it quits for now. Tomorrow morning I'll likely do some more streaming and add some more. I've got 2 more APIs that are working we need adaptive cards for, and then I have all kinds of stuff to copy and paste in. So have a great day. Happy Canada Day weekend. Happy 4th of July weekend. I appreciate you joining, and give me a shout out on Twitter if you had some fun, or if you have any questions, just reach out and let me know. Nick, it's good to see you. Jarno, thanks for joining from Italy. That was great. We'll talk to everybody soon, and have a great weekend.